LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, lacrosse fans? You are watching the 68th episode of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast. Today, we're going to talk about North Carolina, Jacksonville, and Navy. We're going to do 2020 previews for those three teams in that order. They all had a scrimmage last weekend, and we have some highlights thanks to a follower that was at the game that took a bunch of video. So link in the description to their social media pages where you can actually go and see more of the highlights from that game and other things that they put out. Question of the day before we get into this. What do you think, or who do you think currently sits outside the top 10 in the D1 polls that you think has the best chance of making the Final Four? I asked that question specifically because we're talking about North Carolina today. They are on the outside of the top 10, and I think of all the teams on the outside of the top 10, they may have one of the best chances of making the Final Four. So what other teams out there in YouTube, podcast world, Facebook world, Twitter world, Instagram world, who do you all think outside the top 10 right now has a really good chance of making the Final Four? Let us know in the comments. You can hashtag LaxFactor and answer the question, and what we'll do is kind of go through, see who answered, and we'll put those answers up on the next episode. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you're notified when we put out more videos. Also, be sure to watch or listen, I should say, to our new show on anchor.fm/LaxFactor called LaxFactor Lacrosse Daily. We're putting out a daily podcast on every day that we don't do one of these big shows, Monday through Friday. So we're 4 episodes deep already. So you can go to anchor.fm/LaxFactor to check that out. And also, if you want to support the podcast beyond that, just go to laxfactor.com. You can buy t-shirts, hats, polos, coffee mugs, all sorts of stuff, or you can just watch our videos there and support us that way. So I want to get into this now, and I want to talk first about University of North Carolina. Is that what it is? The University of North Carolina? Yeah, UNC. So UNC, they have struggled over the course of the last 4 years. They won the national championship, I believe, in 2016. They have gone 1-3 in the ACC during the regular season every year since then. So they did manage to win the ACC tournament one year, and they eked out a tournament bid that year, and I think they lost to Albany in the first round. I'll get to that here as I'm talking. But overall, UNC's Achilles heel has, beyond just losing in the ACC, and what's kept them out of the NCAA tournament is non-conference losses. Even in 2016, where the year that they won the national title, they had a lot of non-conference losses that year. Hofstra beat them in 2016 and 2017 and 2018. They lost to Richmond in 2017 and 2018. In 2017, they did make the NCAA tournament with an 8-7 overall record after winning the freaking ACC tournament, but they lost to Albany in the first round. That year was a really down year, it seemed, for them until the end, until they got those 2 wins to win the ACC tournament and then get into the NCAAs. And there wasn't an auto bid. I think they ended up with an at-large because they handled their business and they had a couple of really good upsets that year. 2018, they start 6-0. Everything looked great. They looked to be handling their non-conference business, and then they lose to Denver, and that was the beginning of a 7-game skid. They won their first 6, lost their next 7, and then beat Notre Dame in a meaningless game to finish the season. Finished 7-7 in 2018. In 2019, they finished 8-7, thanks to handling their non-conference business. They still lost their butts in the ACC. They still went 1-3 in the ACC. They lost to Virginia twice last year, once in the regular season, once in the ACC tournament, but they finished 8-7 thanks to them not dropping any of those non-conference games. They lost to Hopkins, Denver, and Maryland non-conference, but they beat everyone that they were supposed to beat, which is not normally the case for them. They beat Mercer, Harvard, Marist, and the like. Still, no NCAA tournament bid as they finished 1-3 in the ACC again. And, we're simply 500 before the ACC tournament started, but they were a better lacrosse team overall. And this year they return a lot of that talent that helped them get to that winning, above 500 mark. Most notably, Chris Gray. UNC landed the highest profile transfer of the offseason in Boston U's Chris Gray. He was an All-American last year. He was a Tewaaraton finalist. He put up 111 points in 2019 on 49 goals and 62 assists. Now, before UNC fans get too excited in terms of they're sitting here thinking about Chris Gray putting up those points without the playoffs, they did play, I think, 18 games, Boston U did, maybe even 19 games or 17 games. I think Boston U played 17 to 18 games last year, whereas UNC still only played 15. So he did do that in a couple more games. I do not see Chris Gray getting over the 100-point threshold at UNC simply because I don't think they play a style of lacrosse that is going to be conducive to that. I think he's got a lot more help around him. So one of the things I do expect is that you may even see his goal numbers go down slightly, but his assist numbers stay about the same. So I feel like he's probably going to put up 50-plus assists. He's probably going to score 35-plus goals, but it is going to be hard for him to equal that point output, not because he's not capable. It's just because it's a different system, and he's playing with a lot more talent around him on the offensive side. Another key addition for UNC is going to be getting Will Bowen back. Bowen, I believe it was an ACL injury. It was a knee injury, season-ending knee injury before the season started last year. And they're going to need him badly to get back to form. He was a freshman last year, so he hasn't even played. As they say, he hasn't taken a snap yet if this was football. But he is a really solid, he's a monster, 6'3", 220. This kid will hopefully get worked right into the mix, and hopefully that knee is not still affecting him. On the offensive side, as I said, they have a wealth of talent returning. That starts, I got a little nose itch here. That starts with Nicky Solomon, sophomore, 20 goals, 10 assists. Jacob Kelly, 11 goals, 17 points. Justin Anderson, 19 goals, 6 assists. Will Perry, 26 goals, 95 shots on goal, it looks like. That's a lot of shots on goal. You got to do better, Will Perry. Tanner Cook, 15 goals, 63.4 shots on goal percentage. So it doesn't say what his shooting percentage is. I'm wondering if it's not that good. They got a Fogo in Zach Tucci, who's a 50-50 guy, but I read in one of the boards on FanLax that their freshman faceoff guy who had been subbing Tucci, apparently due to injury or something like that, he's looked really good. Apparently he looked really good, and when called upon, he handled his business at the faceoff dot, so that is good. Defensively, this is where UNC has struggled, and this is where they struggled last year. They had a young defense last year. They have a young defense again, even younger possibly. Cam Macri, I think that's how you pronounce that, senior, he's back. He played 15 games last year, but that's kind of it. They'll depend on a bunch of young guys. Evan Egan, Zach Young, Bowen, and more. They're going to have to play wise beyond their years for North Carolina to have a real shot at winning the ACC. Virginia's loaded. Syracuse is loaded. Duke does not appear to be as loaded. I would almost think that Duke looks like they're kind of the third team, and that Notre Dame may even be in line with them. But even with adding Chris Gray, the question for UNC becomes, do they still have the weakest defense in the ACC? And the answer is possibly. They're going to hope that Caton Johnson in cage, that he's going to be solid and that he's going to have a good February, because in February he is going to get tested with this young defense. So this is one of those seasons, again, where if UNC can handle their non-conference business early, and in February and early January, they've got a good shot at making the tournament, even if they don't fare well in the ACC. But I think for UNC, one of the keys is going to be they need to go 2-2 in the ACC during the regular season. They need to pick up a non-conference game against one of the big cats they play and win one of those games at least, and then they have to handle their business against all of their non-conference foes. I think that UNC is looking at a slightly better than 500 season, even with their tough schedule, but it'll be really easy for them to slip to 500 or below if they drop a game early due to that defense being a little bit green. So I think that with the Chris Gray thing, no, there's just tons of reasons to be optimistic for UNC, between having a solid goalkeeper in cage, between having a lot of really young talent. Like, when I say they have young talent on defense, this is young talent that eventually is going to develop into a really good defensive team. 2021, 2022, UNC's defense is going to be one of their strengths as they're starting to lose some of the offensive talent they've had. But right now, that defense is just a little bit green. Not that they can't come together and play really solid lacrosse. They could, and then you throw in all of these guys, Solomon, Kelly, Anderson, Perry, Cook, and throw Chris Gray into the mix with other guys on offense that'll step up. I think they were saying they could legitimately go 9 middies deep with all the offensive talent they have. Now, granted, that's fans saying that of the team that I was reading in the FanLax board, so I don't think they're really going to be capable of going 9 mids deep in the ACC and then having that work out for them. They're going to have to keep that to 2 solid lines, but they have a really good team, and there's reason to be optimistic if you are a UNC fan.